Why is it that out of all the cameras I've used, out of all the cameras that I own, why is it that I love the X-T1 the most? It's a camera that at this point is 6 years old, can be had for as little as 250, 300 bucks if you find the right deal. Why is it that I love this camera more than my X-T2? More than even my GFX 50R? I'm going to try and explain that to the best of my abilities in this video. First of all, let's take you back to the roots, and this camera was the one that got me to switch from my full-frame DSLR system. I shot the 5D Mark II for quite a few years, and then I dabbled with Nikon, the D750 for a little while, before eventually wanting to switch to mirrorless, and specifically Fujifilm, because of their user interface and the design of their cameras. The X-T1 was the most fun I had ever had shooting with a camera. Everything about it was so intuitive to me and it made sense, and in my mind it was just how a camera is supposed to be designed. Not only that, but the image quality was outstanding for a 16 megapixel APS-C sensor. You know, I was shooting a 24 megapixel full frame sensor, and man was I blown away by how good this was compared to even my full frame stuff. Especially when you're pairing it with some of Fujifilm's excellent lenses. I mean, they make outstanding quality glass. So anyway, why do I still prefer the X-T1 over, say, my X-T2? Or for that matter, X-T3, X-T4? So let's dive straight into image quality. This sensor is phenomenal. I've always raved about the X-Trans 2. 16 megapixels, you know, without an AA filter. It resolves tons of detail, and it is such a good looking raw file that you get. I've always found that, you know, the raw straight out of camera look better to me than the raw files from my X-T2. It kind of naturally exposes a little bit warmer, and just the colors and the look you get straight out of the raw files I've always enjoyed. And you know, when I'm editing, I feel like I'm achieving the look I want easier and with, you know, less work than if I'm shooting with the X-T2. You know, this is when it comes to, like, you know, people and stuff like that. For real estate, it really doesn't matter, but especially shooting people and even landscapes, I just love the look you're getting from the raw files from the X-T1. I don't know, it's something about the images that have always inspired me. They're just phenomenal. And, you know, when I pair it with something like the 35f2 or the 16 2.8 or the 56 1.2, my goodness, can you get phenomenal image quality and phenomenal look. You know, even throwing on the 60mm macro, the detail and just the colors, oh, it's so good. But I mean, it mostly boils down to it's just a fun camera to use that produces excellent images, even for, in my opinion, 2020 standards. The image quality holds up. You can print big prints with it. And I know big is a relative term, but, you know, 20 by 30 easy that look absolutely flawless. And you can print much larger. You know, it's just, it has so much going for it, in my opinion, that makes it future-proof. The autofocusing system gets a bad rap, but honestly, I don't find it that bad at all, especially paired with, you know, those fast, snappy Fujicron primes. Or if I'm shooting with my Rokinon 12mm, I'm using manual focus anyway, and, you know, it doesn't matter. And even things like the EVF, it's 6 years old at this point, but it still holds up. When I compare, you know, when I'm shooting with this compared to my X-T2, I really don't notice any sort of quality difference. The X-T1 is still beautiful, and I've always really enjoyed the EVF. The size and the feel in my hands. Now, the XT line has gotten incrementally bigger with each generation. There are slight increases in size with every, with the XT2 and then the XT3 and so on. And when you look at the XT1 side by side with the XT2, there's subtle differences as far as the size go. But when you hold them in your hands, it's noticeable. And for me, the feeling of the diminutive sort of XT1 with that thumb grip with a small prime just feels so good. There's something about it that I really love. Another thing is the rubber gripping on the X-T1. Now, I know it gets a bad rap for peeling, and that's kind of an issue if you have an X-T1 and use it a lot over a period of time. The glue will start to kind of weaken and the rubber will peel. Fortunately, mine, you know, hasn't started doing that yet, or on any of the X-T1s I've owned, but it feels so much better in the hands than the X-T2. The X-T2 kind of feels more plasticky and smooth and hard, whereas the X-T1, it feels more rubbery. It feels like you have a more solid grip. Even if your palms are sweating or something, that rubber texture feels nicer. The shutter button on the X-T1 I actually prefer and like a lot more than the shutter button on the X-T2 or X-T3. It feels better. I like the tactile feeling of it much more than the X-T1. For me, I have to get some sort of shutter release button to put on the X-T2, a concave version, and that's kind of fiddly because I'm constantly that they're coming loose and falling off, or if you tighten them too much, then you can damage the shutter release. It's just really the only way that the shutter release feels good to me is to have that on there, and I've just had problems with them, and I would just much prefer having the shutter release of an X-T1. I enjoy it more. Now, and then there are little things like the shutter speed and ISO dials. On the X-T2, they're thicker and taller, and on the X-T1, they're thinner. The ISO dial is actually tapered. It's smaller than the drive ring around it, so you have this tapered look. I actually like that. I think it's easier to change the drive dial for the X-T1. And the ISO dial is permanently locked on the X-T1, requiring, 3 fingers to, 1 to push in and 2 to spin it. It's a little more involved than the X-T2. And granted, the X-T2's ISO dial design makes a little more sense if you want, ease of use and you want to be quicker. But there's something about shooting with the X-T1 and having that, more involved, changing the ISO, that is kind of endearing, and it makes it more fun when you're doing personal work. It's just more involved. You're more connected to your camera, I guess, if you want to get all kind of weird about it. Overall, just the experience of shooting with the X-T1 to me it's just more fun than something like the X-T2. The actual shutter in the X-T1, just the way it feels when you press the button and the sound of it is awesome, and it kind of has that where, if you're shooting at 1/4000th of a second, it sounds like you're shooting at 1/100th. It sounds really slow, kind of like the GFX 50R. And for whatever reason, I like that. That's fun. I like the feeling of it. Really, the one thing that would make the X-T1 perfect for me that the X-T2 has is the vertical tilting screen. If the X-T1 could do that, it would be perfect. That's really probably my only complaint as far as usability when I'm shooting with the X-T1 is every now and then I would like to compose, a vertical composition using the LCD and just tilt that vertically. It would be perfect. Looking back on some of the images that I've gotten that I absolutely love, that I think are, fantastic as far as image quality goes, and it's never let me down in the image quality department, in the, capturing moments that I love department, getting the look I want, it's never let me down. For me, it is tried and true, not only in image quality, but in the experience I have shooting with it. The GFX 50R is probably the only camera that gives it a run for its money as far as how fun it is to use and the enjoyment factor. And keep in mind that all this is from the perspective of photography. I don't shoot video, and I will never use the X-T1 for video. It is purely a photographic tool to me. So when people ask me, and I get this every now and then, is the X-T1 a good buy in 2020? Or, is it worth it? I mean, I may be biased, but for the prices they're going for used, absolutely all day long. And I take solace in the fact that my favorite camera of all time basically can be had for very little money. For what you can get for anywhere from $200 to $350, I think it's an absolute bargain and a steal, considering how fun it is to use, considering the image quality you get out of it. It's just amazing. It's amazing. It will always be in my Hall of Fame as far as cameras, and for the time being, it's my favorite camera ever. I mean, even though the GFX 50R is giving it a run for its money. So anyway, it's hard to quantify why I love it so much. I mean, there are subtle nuanced things that I could point to. At the end of the day, it's just one of those cameras that just does something for me. I don't know how else to explain it, but all I need to do is pick it up and hold it in my hands, and take a shot or two with it to really just get that joy and remember why I love it so much. At any rate, those are my thoughts on why I love it so much. I mean, as of right now, if I only had to choose one camera, desert island camera, it would be the X-T1, paired with, some lens. So at any rate, thank you for watching this video. Hopefully some of it made sense. I hope you also enjoyed the photos, and I will see you in the next one.